In 1819, a lumber worker named James Yeo arrived on Prince Edward Island from England. He was nearly 30 and newly married after the death of his first wife. He was by all accounts a hard-working and shrewd man. Allegations of unfair business dealings trailed his rise from superintendent of a lumber operation to owner of the largest shipbuilding company on the island. He built 155 ships, many of which were destined for buyers in England. He took advantage of uncertain ownership of many of the lands around him to exploit the countryside for timber, and he used his network of general stores operating on credit to grant him access to the lands of those indebted to him. His oldest son, William, lived in England and oversaw delivery and completion of Yeo's ships, while his youngest, James and John, managed the yards in Port Hill. With cash in short supply on the island in the 1860s, Yeo lent money out of his ample fortune to the provincial government. It was said that his employee payroll exceeded the colony's total governmental revenue. Some referred to him as the ledger baron of Port Hill and the driver of the government. And his sons, James and John, went on to represent Prince Edward Island in the House of Commons and the Senate. Many Yeos lived and died in the house James Yeo built in Green Park, and it's no surprise that dozens of stories have emerged of lingering spirits on the property.
The last Yeo to reside here in the Yeo House was James's son, Collingwood Yeo. He lived here with his wife, Cora. And indeed, Cora passed away while they were living here in the house. Once Collingwood was older, he could no longer maintain the house on his own, so he moved into a smaller place in Port Hill. But every day, he would come up to the house, to this very door, and he would stand in it, and he would slowly exhale a long, slow breath into this very hallway. And when people asked him why he did this, he said that it was to keep Cora's spirit alive here within the home. And indeed, sometimes when you linger in this front hallway, you catch the faintest smell of pipe smoke, even when there's no one smoking in the vicinity. And sometimes, when you walk down this hallway, you get the faintest scent of an old-fashioned powdery perfume. And I wonder if those smells aren't Collingwood and Cora lingering here in the home to this very day. Let's step into the parlor. Here lies the dearly departed. Only kidding. Now this particular casket is an artifact. It's called a cooling casket. It's made out of woven pieces of wood. Now, we know for certain that these sort of caskets were used at the end of the century, once people began to send the bodies away to businesses to be prepared for burial. It was a lot lighter to carry a body in a casket like this than in a wooden one. We also speculate that perhaps these sort of caskets might have been used earlier in the century when the bodies were prepared at home as a sort of cooling period, because you see, Victorian medicine was not on level with our medicine today. And it was not uncommon for someone to be declared dead, only to make a miraculous recovery sometime thereafter. That is part of why the wake would last for several days, not only to allow time for friends and family to come and pay their respects, but also just to make sure that the deceased did not make a recovery. And if they were laid out in a cooling casket, well, they had a little breathing room, as it were, while they waited. Welcome to the kitchen. This is the hatch into our basement. Now the basement stretches all underneath the house. Back in the 1800s, they would have used it for storage like we do now. They would have stored food for the winter. You had to save a lot of food to make it through a winter here on Prince Edward Island. But there was another thing that they would sometimes store in basements of houses like these. Let's say you were to pass away in January when the ground was frozen and they couldn't really dig a hole to put you in. Well, they had to store the body somewhere. So often they would be stashed in the cellar until the spring thaw. So it is entirely possible that a few Yeos spent their last months lingering in the basement here at the Yeo House. Now, I have to tell you that nobody much likes going down to the basement to fetch things. It's a very unpopular task among the staff. And on one occasion, something rather strange happened. You see, there is a ladder that goes down into the basement from this hatch. Some of our staff members were outside, just outside in the garden here, and they heard the hatch open, and they heard footsteps climbing up the ladder. When they came in to see who had gotten into the house, there was no one there. Let me introduce you to Wheelie. So what is Wheelie, you might ask? Well, he is a Pomeranian dog, believe it or not. As far as we can tell, he was manufactured by a toy company in the late 1800s and was well loved by some child, loved so much that all of his features were rubbed off over the years and he lost a wheel. But there are a couple of strange things about Wheelie. One is how we acquired Wheelie. The thing that it says in our records is that he was found here at the Yeo House. But the story that's been passed down from one staff member to the next over the years is that Wheelie was discovered hidden away inside the very walls of the house, as if someone had tucked him in there, which is strange enough. But stranger still is the fact that sometimes we would find, if we left Wheelie on the floor at night with the other toys, went away, locked up the house, turned on the alarms, the next day when we'd return, we'd come upstairs and discover that somehow Wheelie had moved to a different place in the room, as if of his own volition. What's going on with Wheelie, you might ask? Is some spirit moving him around at night? Well, it's hard to say for sure. Wheelie actually became quite famous a couple of years ago. A museum in England had a Twitter contest where they asked museums all over the world to share their most haunted objects. Well, we shared Wheelie, and he won by popular vote. And the impressions of Wheelie varied widely. Some people said, "Oh, I would die for Wheelie," and others said, "Burn it with fire." Well, I'm rather fond of Wheelie myself, even if he looks a bit cross these days. But I actually had something a little bit strange happen to me with Wheelie just last summer. So I had invited Mi'kmaq Paranormal to come and do an investigation here in the house. And I was walking through the downstairs with them, and they had a device that measures, I believe, some sort of electromagnetic charge in the air. And the device was going beep, 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 and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, beep, 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 beep. Well, we were looking around, trying to figure out what possibly could have provoked the machine to have such a change all of a sudden. And then my colleague came running down the stairs. You see, I had sent her up here to take Wheelie out of his box, where we now keep him since he became so famous, and to put him on the floor where he used to be kept. Well, she said, "You're not going to believe what just happened." I came upstairs, I took the case off of Wheelie, I had just reached my hand underneath him and was lifting up to pick him up, when all of a sudden downstairs I heard beep, 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 beep. So I think that Wheelie was trying to tell us that he likes his pedestal, thank you very much, and did not want to go back onto the floor. Here on the second floor of the house, it seems that a certain feminine presence lingers. There have been several occasions where a woman has been sighted on this floor in an inexplicable manner. There was one occasion where a staff member was coming up the stairs from the first floor, and just as she came up, she saw a woman's skirt, a long black skirt, swish around the edge of the banister as if someone was going up to the third floor on the staircase behind me. She thought it was one of her co-workers because sometimes we are wearing costumes here in the house, as I am. But when she got up to this floor, she said, "Hello?" And there was no answer. And when she went and looked on the third floor, indeed, there was no one there. A common symptom of the haunted house is the hearing of footsteps overhead. We're up on the third floor now, and sometimes there is a mysterious walker pacing up here. One morning, a staff member came into the house and she turned off the alarm, so she knew she was the first one here. And she came up to the second floor and then distinctly heard the footsteps overhead just along this hallway. She knew that there couldn't be anyone in the house, so she came upstairs to have a look. And when she got up to this floor, indeed, there was no one here. But oddly, one of the little storage cubbies that's nestled under the eaves of the house that we don't use for anything was standing open, as if someone had left it open for her to find. When Mi'kmaq Paranormal came to the house, we came up to this floor, and they were standing just here when Julie saw something and watched it, and it seemed as though it fell on the floor between them. We all looked around, but we couldn't see anything on the floor. No idea what it had been. Fortunately, someone was recording video when this took place, and we watched the video back, and in the video you see a little white light appear just here and then sort of fizzle and disappear. Now, you might think, oh, it was a reflection on the lens. But the thing is, in the shot, you clearly see Julie look at the light and watch it move. So it was there in person.
Julie might have been talking, but it caught both our eyes and we followed it, right? Because Julie was standing right beside me. And we followed it as it came down and it came between us and we're both looking. And we didn't know what it was, but you could feel that energy, that it was something.
So we were like, okay, we're not just seeing things, like this is actually something that, and right in between us. And then as soon as it went halfway down around our hip area, it whooshed back into the room that I was just in, where the boys had lived when they were alive. And we were both like, oh, okay, this is definitely a room that needs a little bit more attention. For some people, relaxing means going to a beach and having a book or having quiet time on a hammock. But for us, it's getting a really good night's sleep and then the next night going out till 2 or 3 in the morning and tracking down the sounds, the cupboards that open, the drawers that slam shut, the windows that will creak, and the noises that you will hear in the corners of these old abandoned houses. And that would be our relaxation.
We may never know for certain who haunts the house in Green Park. But the echoes of the life of James Yeo are not just contained within these walls. One need look no further for his legacy than the judicial records of the island, where suit after suit is brought by his lawyer against landowners in debt to him. In each case, the sheriff seized and auctioned their property to pay those debts. Neil McKay, recently deceased, over a debt of £64. Michael White, 100 acres of land, over a debt of £61. Patrick Foy, 50 acres, over £42, 3 shillings and 6 pence. James Finnan, Alexander MacDonald, Sissam Arsenault, Donald Gillis, Angus MacDonald, Gabriel McKinnon. The list goes on and on. When James Yeo died, he bequeathed 14 farms in Lot 13 to his children, not including several already held by his son James. The Yeo House stands empty now in Green Park, an enduring reminder of how quickly the wealthy and powerful, just like the rest of us, can be reduced to the swish of a skirt, a whiff of perfume, and a lingering breath.
There's a happy child at home. There's a happy child at home. In my memory I could see. Standing out upon the hill. Standing out upon the hill. In the shadow of a tree. If I only had my way.